YNW Melly and his lawyers have now created a plan on getting him released from jail in the new year of 2022. This is incredible news that we need to talk about, so let's get straight into it. Now, with YNW Melly's trial starting on March 7th, YNW Melly and his lawyers have now been creating a way for YNW Melly to be officially released. Prosecutors believe they have gathered enough evidence for the trial to start after a long 2 years. In the latest court hearing, prosecutors requested the Broward County judge to force YNW Melly to provide his DNA. This is in order to help solve the court case. They also asked for all of YNW Melly's body measurements as well, meaning the length of his arms, legs, and his body weight to create a model of YNW Melly's body so they can try to recreate the scene on what they believe happened. YNW Melly and his lawyers agreed to the prosecutor's terms. In return, they would like to have a speedy trial. This means that the court date March 7th will not be able to be pushed back or delayed for any period of time. YNW Melly and his lawyers know it's taken law enforcement years to find any sort of evidence on the rapper, and who's to say that they don't try to delay it even further when the trial is set to start. If the speedy trial does end up getting accepted and the prosecutors don't have good enough evidence, YNW Melly will then be officially released from jail under the Florida law. But right now, here's a majority of the evidence that's going against YNW Melly on March 7th. So in this photo, this is where everyone was sitting inside of the Jeep when the so-called drive-by occurred. So this explains as to why prosecutors want YNW Melly's body measurements due to him sitting in the back seat. YNW Juvie and YNW Sack Chaser, which are the two that sadly passed, are the two men sitting on the right side of the vehicle. Then these documents were also released to the courtroom. The first one states, and I quote, "Then also we have a video of Mr. Demons admitting to doing an act towards two individuals in the head." The next one states, "This video was on Mr. Demon's cell phone, which was brought to my office by Jameson Francis, and that is how we had that, and that is all of the evidence that Your Honor has." The next one states, "These particular cell phones, which were both iPhone 10s, were on the T-Mobile network. And so T-Mobile has a very interesting feature where it will tell you the environment the cell phone is in. So from these cell phone records, I can tell you the exact moment Demons got out of the car and staged the drive-by location. Also in the vehicle where YNW Melly allegedly did the act towards two individuals, there was evidence left behind in the car, being a yellow jacket. So this yellow jacket was analyzed by the sheriff's crime lab, and there was a report then issued with it. Dated on September 2nd of 2021, the report indicates that Anthony Williams, aka YNW Sack Chaser's DNA, was a part of the sample, and that there are 3 other potential contributors. The contributor profiles are not eligible to be entered. That's why they need YNW Melly's DNA, as the prosecutors want to prove that Melly is guilty by using a DNA test that was on the yellow jacket. So all of this evidence is crucial against YNW Melly when you hear the official timeline on what happened the day Sack Chaser and Juvie sadly passed. Now the day starts on October 26 in 2018. At roughly 3:30 a.m., YNW Melly, YNW Juvie, YNW Sack Chaser, and YNW Bortlen, the entire YNW team, were all at a recording studio getting work done until their session was over. When their session was over, they all hopped inside of the Jeep and started heading home. The driver of the vehicle, being Cortland Henry, otherwise known as YNW Bortlen, had YNW Melly sitting directly behind him, and then YNW Sack Chaser and YNW Juvie on the opposite side of the vehicle. YNW Bortlen ended up driving on a back road home. On back roads, there are no surveillance cameras, not really any witnesses either at roughly 3:30 in the morning driving on these types of roads. So while law enforcement obviously doesn't know what happened inside of the vehicle, the theory is the vehicle was pulled over to the side of the road. That's when a distraction was made to catch Juvie and Sack Chaser off guard, while YNW Melly did the act towards them in the vehicle. So law enforcement believes it was YNW Melly who did the act for the evidence I shared earlier, and a very important text message that he sent his girlfriend roughly 2 weeks later. This message says, and I quote, "I kept Bortlen with me because at the end of the day, he did one of the realest stuff in my life." It was also around this time where allegedly that video on YNW Melly's cell phone was recorded of him pretty much admitting to doing it. Now this could be YNW Melly's way of thanking Bortlen for remaining loyal and not snitching. But after the act was done, the Jeep was allegedly brought into a side parking lot where nobody was in sight. This is where YNW Melly and Bortlen roughed up the vehicle on a 360-degree motion to make it appear as if it went through a drive-by, because then that is the story they're going to be telling law enforcement as to why Sack Chaser and Juvie sadly passed. Law enforcement allegedly believes this is the case due to YNW Melly and Bortlen taking 40 minutes to get Sack Chaser and Juvie medical attention after a so-called drive-by. Now it wasn't until February 13th where YNW Melly was brought into jail for the act that led to Juvie and Sack Chaser's passing. YNW Bortlen was also arrested and brought into jail for 2 counts of accessory and helping YNW Melly cover it up. Law enforcement has been building evidence on YNW Melly for 2 years. But the one very concerning part of it all is that YNW Bortlen was originally arrested with YNW Melly. And the entire time that they were locked up together, they would always put in bail requests at the same time. That way they have court hearings on the same day. And well, after a few applications for bail, YNW Bortlen was then randomly accepted for bail. But YNW Melly was told that he has to sit in jail until his trial begins. This is where it makes people believe law enforcement has some evidence that they're not willing to share until the trial begins. Because it doesn't make honest sense as to why they would just let YNW Bortlen free, because who knows, Bortlen was in the vehicle with them that day. He could have very easily been the one to do it as well. So they must have groundbreaking evidence that we're not aware of yet. But hopefully YNW Melly and his lawyers are prepared to go to trial. If you want to stay up to date with the trial, which does start very soon, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications. Anyways, this has been District Trending, and I'm out. Peace. If you want to stay up to date with the trial, which does start very soon, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications.